Action. Okay. Yeah, so like I was saying, it's like I'm gonna go through like a little breakdown of things. Kind of like CJ from MFCEO for the people that don't know, but it's something that Mark and I partake in every now and then.
Okay.
Um, you turned me on to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
because
DJ,
and
not CJ.
sorry, DJ. DJ,
DJ.
you're right. And the host is Andy Frisella. So I guess that makes you Andy Frisella.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good with that.
Cool. So I'm Mark. I am the, let's say, owner operator of Myself Actual. I did media stuff as under echelon media for Florida's Fittest, and I'm gonna kick it off to you, Mark.
I am Mark Cox. I am program director for No Longer Fatherless. Florida's Fittest was my idea. Uh, I had a dream like 3 nights in a row that I had a podcast, and I collabed with Mark, and here we are. And yeah, we've been doing this for on and off for like 4 years now. So we
I
want
think
to
like on
continue
and
doing
off,
this,
yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
on
So
and off since like 2020.
yeah.
Like we really hit our stride in 2020, and that's important to kind of discuss before we get going. But I wanna point out that today's date is Wednesday, September 24, and that's important because of what we're going to talk about here in a second. Um, just to put it in context, on on August 22, 2025, a young Ukrainian refugee named Iryna Zarutska was brutally murdered on a train on her way home in North Carolina. And about 2 weeks after that, right around when people were kind of finally, finally coming to grips with what had just happened, political commentator Charlie Kirk was assassinated on September 10, 2025, just a day prior to September 11, 2025. So I want to say all those things to kind of contextualize where we're at in this discussion. And I want to get back to what you kind of touched on when you talked about us getting into this um, beside your dream. But the way I've kind of understand why we do this is because it's because of our commitment to a mission of stewarding a broad community to individual empowerment and the legacy of personal strength to build compassionate and just and morally sound communities.
Yeah.
Um, so I say that because the biggest thing for I think you and I talked about this. We said like the goal of this is legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about taking the lessons we've learned growing up as young men, the mistakes we've made, the stuff we figured out, um, and putting it in this context. And so now that you kind of got the intro, before we move on, I was going to ask you to lead us in prayer, but I was going to ask you if it would be okay if I could briefly lead us in prayer to kick off this episode
Dude,
before we go any
absolutely.
further.
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessing of this moment, the breath in our lungs, the sun coming through our windows, and the opportunity to live in a country where we have the space, time, and place to be able to speak to our truths and to do it for now for 5 years. I understand that we are all living in a current time of turmoil and it is challenging our spirits. And so I am grateful, and I think I can say that we are all grateful that we have had the opportunity to grow our families, keep living our lives despite everything else. Um, Thank you very much for this opportunity and hope and pray that we can have an opportunity to keep doing this moving forward.
And
Amen.
yeah,
So I
awesome.
wanted to, the reason why I wanted to ask you for the opportunity to do that is because in the spirit of what this podcast represents, it's trying to find it's us trying to understand the world around us and the meaning of everything that we're trying to do. And in the process, I've gone from wannabe communist, intellectualized atheist or agnostic, and ultimately I've landed here where let me show you guys. And actually I'm kind of excited about this. I just got a copy of the Orthodox Study Bible as recommended by our mutual friend Hudson. And it's no surprise that I gravitated towards the Orthodox Bible because I grew up in a
You're an extremist,
somewhat
dude. Like you just
I,
everything you do is nothing's halfway. You have to do everything extreme. So,
it that's a good way of putting it. The other part of putting it is that what I've sought growing up is clarity in
mhm.
understanding the world, and I think it's important to go back to the meanings of things. And I think we sort of lost the meanings of a lot of things, specifically in the last 10 years, and most definitely in the last five.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me in my spiritual journey, it was something that I started off as Catholic. I went to church every Sunday with my parents,
Same.
and it was more of for me, it was trying to understand something that I didn't have a relationship with God
Hmm.
then because it didn't click. And then
You just kind of
I
went through the
turned
motions.
it just kind of went through the motions, and then finally I was like, yeah, I was old enough to where like I'm not going to go to church, and
Yep.
then something just pulled me back. It was God pulling me back into the church in a way that
Yep.
I can understand it,
Yep.
and for that to happen, there's so many principles, right? So we often talk about, masculinity and leadership, and I can't think of a better father figure than the Lord our God, or a better masculine figure than Jesus
Hmm.
in all the context of it. He was strong, he led with fatherly love, unconditional fatherly love, and there's nothing more masculine. And like people like to throw around these terms of um, alpha and sigma and all these things. Well, Christ was all the above.
Hmm.
He was the alpha of alphas.
Absolutely. I, I think the alpha and the omega, right?
Yeah.
um, and so for me, I want to be abundantly clear on the reason why there's such significance in me leading that prayer. Um, because right now, let's say there's a reluctance in my belief. And part of that is the reason why I am turning very specifically to a very rigid word is because I I'm gonna, just to be clear to a lot of people, I'm going to use a lot of language that sounds very provocative. Um, I mean, I'm not trying to be provocative. It's just that's how I've come to understand these things. So when I say that I was led astray, that's sort of the emotional way of explaining it. The way that you kind of explained it, you said how did you say it? You were like, I'm just kind of going through the motions. This isn't really my thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you kind of was like, all right, I'm gonna go find my own path. And
Yeah.
so in a similar way, I wanted to find my own path and create my own world. But the problem with that, as we've discovered, is then you start to define the world according to your experience.
Yeah. And that's like one of the, you know, I I'm gonna sound like a spokesperson for this book, but yeah, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill was one of the books that, turned me to Christ.
Hmm.
And one of his schemes is for you to try to own your own world, try to
Mm.
carve your way into life where you think you have control of your surroundings when ultimately you don't.
Is that the book where I think there's a quote like the greatest trick that the devil ever played was convincing people that he didn't exist?
Yes.
Is that? Oh, that is where that comes from. Okay, cool. Yeah. it's interesting the way that you said that original part from the book about you defining your own world, because that's exactly what I was trying. I remember exactly that. And I think it's sort of a it's a it's a perversion and an inversion of the idea that God exists in all of us.
Hmm.
And so we take that next logical step to say that, well, if God exists in all of us and I can determine my own world, then that means I am God.
Yeah.
And so that is that is essentially that was Lucifer's sin,
Yeah.
was to claim that he
Absolutely.
was God.
Yes.
And so, and the reason why that's important, I want to tie this back to the modern discussion, is you heard this again. I'm not trying to be provocative. Mark and I both agree on this. You hear these phrases like "my lived experience" or what's another one?
My lived experience, my truth.
"My truth." That's
Yeah.
another one.
That's a really big one that a lot of people like to say.
Yeah, well, that's my truth.
Yeah. My truth. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
So not the truth, my truth.
no, not you're right. That's a good
Yeah.
distinction. It's not
Yeah.
the truth. It's my truth, and
Yeah.
that's an important discussion to have because it's led us down the road that you and I called out would happen
Yeah.
back in 2020 when the riots started happening. And
Mhm.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. They were riots.
Yeah.
They were not. You can call them protests. You can call them peaceful, but they were riots.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
We don't have to rehash, how many episodes we did in 2020 of those.
yeah.
You guys can go look back,
Yeah,
but
I'll reference those or something.
yeah,
But
but
the point was like when you don't have a an objective truth to define things by, you end up creating your own truths. And
yeah,
that was and then you start to define the world around you. And the problem with that, and this is why I referenced those old episodes, is you and I said, you know what this is going to create? It's going to fracture communities and it's going to create tribalism.
yeah, and that's exactly where we're at right now. Um,
Yep.
Total tribalism.
Hmm.
Like the divide in people is. I want to say that it's not as strong as the media is trying to make it.
Correct. I would agree
I
with that.
think, yeah, I think the media tries to pull it very strongly, and then I think that the reality of it, the truth in the matter of it, is that it's not as divisive as the media would like us to see it as
Correct.
or see it as.
Correct. Yeah. And that actually touches on another point that I wrote down, is that in order to navigate this complicated world and not try to create our own, here's a good one. It's not just about creating your own world. It's your echo chamber or your safe space or your bubble.
Yeah,
And that's what. So that's the point of what I wanted to address, is that it's a discernment in a social media algorithm-driven world. Like you said, it's not as crazy as it looks like online when you're like looking at your phone and you're death like doom scrolling.
yeah,
Um, it's just that, to go back to our original point, if what we're trying to do is share these lessons with people who were just like us when we were younger, then um, you need to be able to see and navigate through the current world that you live in. And the way that it's built is, and this isn't a conspiracy, algorithms are made to serve up content that speaks to you
yeah,
because it's made to maximize profit for the company on the other side. What that means is everything is going to be catered exactly to the message that you want to hear and nothing
yeah,
else.
yes. So just a caveat on that. I mean, if you're in a group of people and you all are thinking the same and you come up to the
Hmm.
same conclusion, that means someone in that group is not thinking, or multiple people
Yep.
in that group are not thinking.
Yep.
Um, because that's literally like, that's what sheep do. They follow like lemmings do. Like you keep hearing, growing up, I kept on, being told like, hey, don't be a sheep, don't be a follower, be a leader, don't be a lemming, don't go off like you five of your friends jump off a bridge, are you gonna follow them?
Yep.
Like that's the same thing, the same lessons that you get taught over and over again as a child, and yet we are doing it in our actual lives.
Yep. And I want to not say be devil's advocate, but I want to address a gap there.
Yeah.
Some people may think, oh, well, you two are talking about biblical understanding and the Word of God. Um, you can construe that as it's easy for someone to rip that apart and say that someone who is, and there is some truth to this, someone who is of the flock, who is would be essentially sheep, because definitively that's what that looks like for some
Yep.
intellectual secularist. But the thing is, just because you don't subscribe to, say, faith or the book or whatever, it's not to say that you haven't created your own religion in the safe space social media bubble that you built for yourself.
Yeah.
And that was a realization that I had back in high school, actually, when I thought I was being a rebel because I was listening to like, and I still listen to rock, I still listen to metal, and I listen to punk here and there. But I was hanging out with a bunch of punk rock friends. But when you look around, they're all the same, and that's kind of what threw me, is realizing that I'm in just as much of a congregation amongst these people as I would be in church.
Yeah. It's the same.
It is. Some would claim that they were part of a cult. Um, it's funny that you brought up that the world isn't as bad as you make it out to be according to your social media. I actually wrote that down. I didn't realize I'd written it down, and you just called it out. And yeah, having the grace and patience when consuming and reacting to your online space, because it's not as real as it could be. But here's the thing, to tie it back to Iryna to start. Um, I want to it's so before we get too deep into like all the formal conversation we can have around that, I just kind of want to hear your broad discussion on your thoughts and feelings around first the Iryna situation.
So that one bothered me in so many ways, right? Um, this is a woman who left the country for a better life. From my understanding, she did it the legal way, right? She's working super hard. She's working at a pizzeria, like out of all places, taking public transport. She's essentially struggling in the new world where, where America is like, land of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
It's not as glamorous as everyone would think it is, because you have somebody who is capable, but she's working low income, riding public transportation, right? And she's trying to live the American dream,
Hmm.
and for it to be snuffed out because of the color of her skin is crazy. Now people are like, well, who's mentally unstable? I was like, well, if he was mentally unstable, he shouldn't have been out in the first place. So
Hmm.
that's a fail on the justice system. That's one. So that really bothered me. And two, it, you're gonna tell me to my face that it's not racially motivated when he muttered the words. It's like, I got the white girl,
Hmm.
right? And then you have four other people of the same color standing there, sitting there like nothing happened, right? No one
Hmm.
comforted her. No one stopped the man walking around with a bloodied knife. And to me, that addresses multiple problems, right? It is because there were men in that on that train. I'm assuming is public transportation, right? So that addresses a lack of masculinity, right? A lack of accountability, and a fail in the justice system, right? We've been desensitized to violence. All these violent video games, and yes, I play violent video games. I like Red Dead Redemption. Like that's like one of my favorite games, but as a man and as a father of girls, even before that, I know myself. I would not be able to sit still while a violent act happened in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
or even like not comfort a dying person. Now, maybe that's just the first responder in me. Maybe that's just my upbringing, but I would not be able to sit still while that happened. Like there would be the oh sensor going off my brain, and I would have to act and do something. I could not sit idly by it, and I don't understand why they did, and
Mm-hmm.
they let her die alone.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's a fail of what America should be,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's a fail of what society should be. You know, if we're supposed to be united, you know, I don't feel united. That in that sense, we weren't united, and it's a tragedy. I couldn't imagine
Yeah. Yeah.
being on
And
that train.
it's hard. You can hear the disbelief in your voice because, like you said, and I agree, it is absolutely insane that this woman had to endure what she endured, suffered through what she had to suffer when she aspired to live the American dream. And the reason why I say that is because whenever, and I can speak to this because my parents brought us here when I was about 6 or 7 to pursue that very same dream. The rest of the world sees America as the upstanding torchbearer for a vision of a place where you can pursue your dreams as long as you're willing to put in the effort. And
Yes.
like Mark said, Iryna was working a low paying job at a pizzeria, taking public transportation, and she trusted that vision of a safe America, which is based on the foundations of morals that, and people are questioning this. People are saying this is not a Christian nation. I understand that we do not live in a theocracy. This isn't Iran. This is not a theocracy. So, in that respect, no. We're not a Christian nation in that respect. But if you want to be genuinely authentic, you have to understand that contextually, the founding fathers were steeped, they were
Yes.
soaked in Christian ideals. They were children of the Enlightenment.
Yes.
They started to broaden their understanding of Christian theology at that time. There were different factions within Christianity that questioned the motivations. Hobbes believed that all men were sinners, and in Hobbes' idea of Christian value, Hobbes believed that we should have an angry, punitive God that kept us in line. I don't necessarily agree with that. I agree with the more light-hearted version that speaks to the way Jesus kind of sup- supplemented the Old Testament, so to speak, and gave it a lighter spin. Jesus still honored the word and the law of the Old Testament, but it wasn't quite as punitive, and Jesus gave everyone the opportunity to be able to recover from sin. The reason why I say that is because that value, if you were, there is a snarky perspective in the atheist agnostic world that God is a flying spaghetti monster and religion is a way of explaining the world. And that's a smartass way to call it. But even using that logic, you can still use this to understand and define the way you see the world in saying, not the extreme things, obviously. You don't want to smite your enemies. That's not your job. That's God's job.
Yeah.
You're not going to smite your enemies. You're not going to necessarily punish people that you don't know for their sins. So it's not a sin it wasn't a sinful place that Iryna came from. She came from Ukraine and moved over to America as a legal refugee who went through the process to try and chase this dream. She was almost in a way pursuing a kind of um, what would you call it? A not forgiveness, but another opportunity. She
Yeah.
lived in a world that was devastated by violence, you could say sin or what have you. She came to America to pursue a dream that was free and give the opportunity to try again. And that was denied her.
Yeah.
The next step, because it was a deviation of values, was in terms of the gentleman who perpetrated this crime. We have deviated from the value that felonious activity, felonies are bad for a reason.
Yeah. And this
So,
is not his first, and we've seen this multiple times. Like, this is
yes,
not his first offense.
this isn't his
It's not
first.
not his first violent offense.
It was his
And
14, like he was,
14, yeah. So
yeah,
he's
he'd been
given
charged
opportunity after
for,
opportunity, opportunity,
yes,
and people, and somebody who's worked in the mental health field, I worked
both
as a
of us
behavior
have, yeah.
counselor. Yeah, both of us have, right?
Yeah, both of us have.
At
We've
at
both
what
been in that
point,
space.
at what point do you stop giving people opportunities? I mean, I understand mental health is a
Yes,
big issue in the United
mental
States,
health
right?
is critical.
But if you're going to use it as a scapegoat every time anybody who murders somebody else has a mental health issue.
Yes.
Like that is not a normal thing to do,
No,
right? So
we have to draw a
you,
line in the
yeah,
sand.
you have
That's
to.
why.
That person should have been locked away and the whole thrown away with the key.
And they can have an opportunity for rehabilitation in the context of that.
Yeah, you get
Because
to live in a cage for the rest of your life because that
and
that should not have been allowed to happen. Like
it's not even a cage. It's a cage in that your freedoms are restricted, but it's not a cage in the respect that you are like you're fed 3 square meals. You're provided a safe space to live. You have the opportunity, if you want to become educated. Um, there are plenty of stories of people that have gone to jail, come out the other side, and they've taken the time to not only rehabilitate themselves, but to also learn and get college educations.
yeah,
Um, uh, there's a movie by Denzel Washington, Hurricane. Um, it's the story of a boxer, Hurricane Carter, I believe.
yes,
He went to jail under false pretenses. He was illegally jailed because the system lied and
yeah.
manipulated. And he was put in jail, and he was able to learn the law so that he can defend himself and put himself in better standing when he got out. And it's important to reference stories like that because people will claim that institutionalizing someone like the gentleman that murdered Iryna is somehow a negative thing. And the thing is, you have to draw lines in the sand.
Yeah.
You have to say that if someone makes a mistake, fine. Makes another mistake, fine. But 14 mistakes, and of those mistakes, there's violence in some of them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna touch on something we addressed, and it's gonna get a little even more controversial. This is why it's difficult, and then we're gonna spin into Charlie here in a second. It's difficult to support someone like George Floyd. People will argue that George Floyd was a father, he was a man, he was trying to live his life. Understandable. But the man also had felonies, of which involved violent acts.
Yeah.
Not to mention pointing a gun at his pregnant girlfriend, wife.
Yeah.
If any of us were involved in something like that, we would be in a lot of trouble. And that's putting
Yeah.
it lightly.
Yeah. Well, even like I'm going to I'm going to hit the race card. Like if the roles were reversed,
Yeah,
right? How far would have gone,
I don't know.
right? So,
That's true.
um, if
Well,
George
I
Floyd
guess
was white, pointing a gun at a pregnant woman, he's like thrown in jail, thrown away the key. you're never getting out.
Yeah.
Right? If Iryna was black
Black.
and was
Cities
stabbed
would
by
be
a white
burning.
man, cities would be burning. And
Yes.
I'm that's a fair statement to make because
That is a
it's true.
fit. That's exactly what happened from 2020 almost into the end of 2022.
Yeah.
Or what was it?
Summer of
2021,
love.
22. Yeah, it was summer of love.
Yeah.
And never mind that we were in the middle of trying to work through a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
The further lies were perpetrated at the time when people were said, you who are healthy, you who are willing to abide by the law, you who are willing, who just want to go see your elderly family, who just want to go to church in
Mm-hmm.
California, you want to get out in the sun and go
Straight to jail.
to the skate park, you go to jail.
Yeah.
And in California, they buried the skate park in Venice, California. You can find footage of this. They shuttered businesses. You just want to run your business, and so many businesses were destroyed because of a manipulation, inversion, and a violation of words.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
when there's no clarity, and you can say a man with 14 charges to his name is somehow let off the hook and sometimes even celebrated by people. And then
Yeah.
they said he was a victim of the system.
Yeah.
How when the system
Well,
released him?
yeah. Yeah. Well, this is my thing too. Like people, and I see it all the time because I do work with kids. Like it's a victim mentality. Everything is somebody else's fault. There's zero accountability for anything, and it's frustrating to be a parent and a coach
Yes.
because you're trying to instill accountability and responsibility, and yet you people society finds excuses for these situations. You know,
Yeah.
I get I get told by people still to this day that the only reason why I was so successful in swimming or in life or is because of systematic oppression and uh just I had to work 10 times harder. I was like, no, I got everything that I have done in my life is based on merit. I was
Yeah.
faster than the people I was recruited by,
Yep.
than were getting recruited by. I had better grades. I had more credentials. That's the bottom line. There was no like, oh well, he's black because no one knows I'm black by my sound of my voice or by my name.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
until they meet me, then they're like, oh, you are a different skin tone than I am.
Yep.
And
That
that is the lie that we get fed, and I get fed all the time. And I'm like, how would you know? Because you don't live my life.
you don't know my lived experience.
Yeah,
uh, you that and we've joked about this in the past. A lot of your successes was fueled by your anger.
yeah, and
So
like that's me being angry right now
you
because
had a
it's
chip on your shoulder that drove you forward to create the results that you wanted, and people rob you of that by saying, "Oh no, bro, it was the system,"
yeah, absolutely.
which is it's like, and I
It's
keep hearing this.
gaslighting. Yeah,
It's gaslighting, but also people have been using this phrase lately. I can balance two contradictions in my mind, um, because they're trying to shut down the conversation because they can't reconcile it in actual discussion, and it's frustrating because I've been told this. I'm an immigrant.
yeah,
Um, Not only am I an immigrant, I'm the son of an immigrant. We moved here, and my mom had to build everything up from nothing. It
yeah,
took my mom years of leaving us behind in the Philippines. I think probably 2 or 3 years to get the paperwork, to get the money together, to do all the due diligence to become citizens of this country. And then people will manipulate language to cut in line
yep,
and abuse the system. And the way that they abuse it is because it's for the sake of compassion.
yeah,
And yet, when we compassionately speak to the murder of a young lady who was victimized by the very same system that they believe they created, we call foul and go, and they tell us we're in the wrong.
Yes.
And I want to be clear. By we, I don't mean like me, a fundamentalist Christian on the right. You can claim that, but I mean we, I mean as a person who is a father who has worked in mental health and substance abuse, and and I've worked in those fields with different varieties of people. I'm in the healthcare space. Mark has done all of those things as well. And we have to be the stewards of pupils' well-being. So we have to abide by some kind of rule and law to be able to provide these people with an opportunity to keep moving forward. Not to mention your daughters, my daughter. We have to try and bring them and engender in them trust this system that we live in because it's built for you to be able to thrive. But then I can't even confidently speak to that anymore because you can be a multi-felon person and take the life of someone who is trying to make the most out of this life.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, now that we're talking about being incensed by things going on in the world, which brings us to Mr. Kirk.